Good morning, everyone, and welcome to third session with myself, Nathan Baranowski from Digital Wonderlab, and James Berry, Chief Exec from Great Western Credit Union. Today, we are going to be talking about putting user experience at the center of your digital partnership and the work that we've done with Great Western Credit Union in order to deliver a new digital ecosystem. With that in mind, I shall hand over to James to kick things off.
Thanks, Nathan. So as Nathan said, we're going to really talk about putting the user experience at the centre of a digital partnership today, in focusing on the partnership that we've developed between Great Western Credit Union, or GWCU, as I'll refer to it for short, and Digital Wonderlab, which was really all built off the back of some work that we did a couple of years ago. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the way that we've developed the partnership in order to embed that customer experience work, I just thought it'd be helpful to give a quick overview of what a credit union is and what we do, because I know that not many people, too few people, are familiar with the great work that credit unions do around the country. So really, a credit union is basically a small bank. We manage risk, we build institutional capital, and we help to match the needs that borrowers have for funds with the needs of savers who've got excess funds to deposit. Credit unions are regulated by the Prudential Regulation Authority and the Financial Conduct Authority, the same way as a big bank or a building society, although we do have a proportionate regulatory regime, which means that luckily we don't need quite the same army of compliance officers that the larger institutions do. Our depositors are protected by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme in the same way as funds held with the big banks and building societies are. Around the country, there are around 300 credit unions. Many of them serve a geography, as GWCU does. Some serve other forms of association. There has to be something in common between the members of a credit union and the potential members. So it's really a mutual kind of business model, and it's really built around connection between people, which of course is important when we come to look at the tech as well. So at GWCU, we really are all about banking with a purpose. We were known until quite recently as Bristol Credit Union, and we used to serve the people of Bristol, Bath, South Gloucester, North Somerset, and that kind of former Avon County or West of England area. We've expanded the membership area late last year, late 2020, to encompass quite a spread across the southwest. So from Gloucestershire right down to Dorset now. But really, we are still looking to achieve exactly the same things that we always have done, which is to make a real difference for people's lives through providing them with accessible and affordable financial services. So what does that mean in practice? Well, a number of different things that we do. We provide savings and loans for people. Oftentimes, our borrowers and our savers would be people who would struggle to access financial services from mainstream institutions. They're people who might be less confident in managing their money. They might be less confident digitally as well, and sometimes those things go together. But what we have found over time is that a lot of our members might think they're not online, or they might think they're less confident digitally, but often they'll have the sorts of apps and the sorts of online interactions that everybody else has. So they'll be very familiar with things like Facebook or Instagram and those sorts of social networks that people interact with more and more will be things that they do have. So one of our aims has been to try to make sure that we can bring some familiarity to people who may be less confident with a banking app, with banking services, to help them to understand and to see how easy it can be to manage their money online. In terms of the difference that we make for people in general, though, we saved our members nearly £3 million in interest across 2019-2020. That's the difference between what people would have paid to high-cost lenders and what they actually paid to the credit union. And of course, all the interest that they pay on loans is put back into the pot to help to develop services and to reward savers for the use of their money as well. Again, that's that mutuality model in that way. 1 in 7 of our borrowers would have cut back on heating or food without their loan from us, and our satisfaction rate is regularly over 90%. So people are, in general, really happy with the service that they get from us, and that includes those who, as I say, would have been often very poorly served by other institutions. Lots more really good information about the impact that we have in our social impact report, which is available on our website. But I think at this point, I'd set out the reason why we were looking to do some work on our digital platform, which is where the partnership with Digital Wonderlab began, really. So one of the issues that we'd found over the last few years was that we were struggling to extend our reach very far. So even when we still had the smaller area of Bristol and the surrounding towns and city, we were struggling to extend our reach much beyond our traditional geographical footprint, if you will, which was the inner city of Bristol and some of the estates like Hartcliffe, like Southmead, and areas like St Paul's and Easton. So one of the reasons for that was because our tech was particularly clunky, for want of a better word. We had a variety of systems that weren't connected. When we looked at how we were able to process a loan application, for example, there were multiple spreadsheets, many databases. We rekeyed things 4 or 5 times throughout the process. The website was not very responsive to mobile. And when we looked into the stats, we found that actually 75% of our online visitors were coming via a phone or via a tablet. So having something that wasn't responding properly to that was a real failing. We also had very limited tracking and marketing info available to us from the portal that we used to have. And of course, the big shift in consumer behavior and consumer expectation over the last 5 years hadn't in any way passed our members by. They were more and more looking to do things in a digital way that we just weren't able to offer at the time. Even the expensive credit providers, the payday lenders and others in a similar space, people like Wonga, although they were very expensive, people actually really liked the ease with which they could interact with them. And that was something that we weren't able to provide them. Effectively, we hadn't really had a major change digitally for around 15 years. So as well as the issues that we'd identified with our offering, we also knew that like standing still is not an option. We were conscious that we were in a space where we needed to grow and needed to continue to serve more and more people, and to be able to enable that growth on a sustainable basis without increasing the cost base at the same rate as we were looking to grow the membership and the impact that we make for people. Digital really was a key part of how we were going to be able to do that. And I think that having identified that as the key enabler for our future growth and for our future ability to deliver impact, we then needed to look for the right partner. And in doing that, we were really looking for an organisation that would be able to think strategically with us, but will be able to help us without a big tech team, or without any tech team. In fact, our IT department for many years was me, and a big book about how to manage Microsoft Server. So we weren't particularly advanced. We had changed probably 4 or 5 years ago to having an external IT support, which was a huge weight off my shoulders and a blessing, I'm sure, for everybody. But we still didn't really have an in-house capability in terms of future direction for tech. So finding somebody who could bring that side of things to us was important, but also trying to go for somebody who was right size. So we didn't want a 1 or 2 man band, because we would then potentially be exposed to quite a high level of dependency and risk in terms of key person risk there. We also didn't think that we really wanted to be with somebody huge either, where we would be a tiny fish in their big pool of other work, which might have meant that we were unable to get the level of responsiveness that we wanted, and to get really to interact very directly with developers, with UX, and with designers to make things in the way that we felt we wanted to do it. So I think I'll hand over to Nathan at this point just to introduce Digital Wanderlab and how they came to be partnered with us.
So it feels like a bit like a story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, as you're describing it there, James. So yeah, very much we were just right in terms of size and fit. And I think that's something that's really important. We came to this with a really understanding of kind of what could be the drive on the social impact was really important, and that aspiration of wanting to take on and fight the sort of the giants of the world and be able to support from that was really key. So for us at Digital Wonderlab, we support impact and purpose-driven organisations to use digital and use it well to serve their purpose and their strategic needs. And in this instance, was pretty much a smattering of every part of our organisational services in order to support from user experience and solution design all the way through to quite complex application development, as well as bringing other partners to the table that we know within our ecosystem in order to support what was needed to be put together. But for us, it was really, I think, one clear bit in terms of the partnership was that there was this very clear aspiration around realizing the benefit, the need of getting members and member experience right, and everything needed to be member driven, and making that as frictionless as possible was kind of the overwhelming driver. And I think that really helped in forming the relationship and the partnership, in that we were all gunning for that. And what did that mean? That might differ in our views at different points, but actually really clear about making sure that we did that and we did that well, as well as that we made sure that the system was as efficient, as effective as it could be in order to process applications, in order to support members in their needs, as well as creating that overall better experience online and offline, because too often the online is sort of driven but forgets about what actually happens offline, and how do people connect into that, and how do we talk through that. And user testing was key, and I love a good bit of testing. It's always one that always kind of leaves us with assumptions of what we think might be best and what might not be best. And in this project, it was a great example where the technology could allow us to deliver a loan decision on only 3 pieces of data, but actually going through testing, people felt that that was kind of strangely unsecure, and possibly, how do you know that? That's like magicry wizardry thing that's going on there, and I don't feel that that's okay. So in our sort of rationalization, we over rationalized and then had to add data back into the system, which we don't really even need to know in order to make a loan decision, but to make sure that people felt secure. And that bit that James said around, people who aren't necessarily technologically okay or necessarily savvy, feel that point is kind of actually, how do you know this and why would you know this? And how do you make those messages really clear to people about what is happening next? And that was really important in driving forward on that process. Into then the solution itself, and I think this is kind of, for us, was really important, that we were able to deliver something that was, one, had a really fundamental change in terms of the visual design. The organization was rebranding, branded twice, from Bristol Credit Union into Great Western Credit Union, but also that the user experience was mobile first, genuinely. So for that in mind, we never built anything other than mobile screens for anything. Everything was driven on, if it doesn't fit on a mobile, we ain't doing it. And then we looked to respond that outwards. So we looked at it the other way around in order to help us to get that visual element right, but also make sure that experience was good and strong. The other aspect of this is fundamentally is about bringing an ecosystem together and making sure that ecosystem can support the needs of the organization. There are many solutions out there, but the credit unions are not able to afford some of those items in the way that maybe large banking institutions can. And so it's really trying to find those right connecting elements that allow us to do the things that we need to do in the way that will support us in the work we need to do. So in essence, it's an ecosystem full of lots of little services that then deliver the outcome that we want. And that fundamental outcome is, how do you take a loan application, take it through a process as quickly and simply as possible in order to give someone a decision. In the old world, that would take maybe 9 days to get someone to a position where they could understand that outcome. We could do that now in less than 9 minutes, and going through a process if we had all the right things in place to be able to support that. And so that was really key, and getting that into a place where we can then support it, but also can allow the growth. And so we end up with a member-focused, efficient, open source, connected platform. That's absolutely fundamental to the way that we ran this and supports the growth of the organization and the replacement of other systems in the future. Jump on for me if you may, James. Well, as they say in the COVID briefings, next slide, please. So there's a number of realizations with this. So, however, fundamentally change isn't easy, and change definitely isn't linear, and nor does it stop when you go live. But managing change in an organization where there hasn't been any change potentially for 15 years, where things are definitely ingrained and are a challenge, it is not an easy thing. But also, it's never hard bringing people into a technological change, but also it's not easy to do when you've got huge amount of technological change and huge amounts of process change happening in a time when there's lots of other things going on, and in the main it's happening also during a pandemic. But our role in all of it was to really just work very closely with the GWC team, to work as a single team at points very hard. We all shared in the blood, the sweat, and the tears in order to make sure that we did it right. And we were all invested in making sure that outcome was as best as it practically could be, but also recognizing that it needed supporting beyond the go live. Too many partnerships are about delivering an output and not an outcome. Our outcome is making sure that there is a platform there that allows the growth and the ambition to be realized, not just sticking in a new website or a new system in order to support something. And that's really important. And with that comes culture, comes process change, becomes technological change. And those three things really became kind of the core of the mantra in the later points.
That's right. Thanks, Nathan. So yeah, I think the cultural shift for GWCU was large. We've had to become more innovative, and we've had to become a bit more agile. Although I think that our kind of natural financial services prudence and outlook can sometimes mean we're a bit wagile, as somebody put it to me not too long ago, which is kind of waterfall agile mix up. But we're doing our best to shift, and it is a big shift across the whole of the team in terms of having to have worked through that significant amount of change that Nathan set out, and to adopt a new way of working for the future. One of the things, though, that was not such a change for us, because of the way that we're set up and because of our business model, has been the way that we can work to embed the member experience within the future development that we do, and that's through a number of different avenues. So we have more formal user testing that we've continued to run on the platform, and it was really fascinating just how quickly people's expectations have changed the last time we did that. So we go back 2 years to our old portal. Logging in was extremely clunky. You had to remember 3 or 4 random bits of information, including a member number and a security code, and then the password that you'd set and other things. And now, much easier. You just log in with your email address, a password, and then a 2-factor authentication code is sent to your mobile. So all very easy. Now, of course, having had that change, the people who are now using the portal have completely forgotten about the old way that things worked, and are now saying, "This is ridiculous. You're asking me to type things in. We want to be able to log in by using our fingerprint or by using face recognition." So it's a really good example of how we need to continue to listen to what our members want, what our users want, and to continue to refine things for them. But as well as that kind of more formal user testing and direct involvement in co-design of the platform, we have various other avenues like our member forum. We have an annual meeting of the membership where we have our volunteer board of directors will receive feedback very directly from people to say, what's working for them and what isn't, and that obviously then feeds through into the team through me and through others to make sure we can take those things forward as well. And I think that as a mutual, it is really important for us to continue to do that testing and learning and making sure that things are really, really built in the way that members want to interact with them. It really is about being truly member driven. Sometimes trying to find ways to engage members as early as possible in the process. But even then, accepting that it's only when things are really out there in the wild that you sometimes find what's going to happen when people start to use things. I think that's been another big realization. Sometimes the people who want to get involved early, or the people who will come to a member forum and give you their opinions, aren't actually representative of the majority of people who are going to be using the service or using the digital platform. So they might do things in a certain way, but it's only when actually it gets out there and everybody starts using it that we then find that things are being done in a way that maybe we didn't anticipate, and we then just have to go and tweak and do all those other things that is common with any sort of fintech or tech platform that's consumer facing of any sort these days. And that again has been part of the culture shift for us, is being that reactive and not imagining that what we've built on day one is what's going to be there for the next year. It really is about constant refinement. And I think that change and that shift, and also just that constant adaption, hasn't been easy, but in any sense, it's quite easy to sit here and say it, but it's much harder to do it, and particularly to do it, of course, in the middle of a pandemic, when everything shut down. We had a couple of meetings with the team at DWL pre-pandemic, but once pandemic hit and once lockdowns were in place, of course, we had to park those face-to-face meetings. So the vast majority of the project was carried out via Teams. We hardly saw each other. Like, we didn't see each other for must have been a good 9 months or more, Nathan, over the course of the project delivery. And of course, at the same time as doing this particular project, we were running a whole host of other projects because we had to deal with the impact of the pandemic on our business as usual as well, and the impact of the pandemic on our members. And we had to really do a lot of work to put in place different things so that we could support people who were on furlough, or people who were laid off and who were then going to struggle to maintain their commitments in terms of loan repayments in particular. So there's a whole host of things that we had to do all at once, and it's an absolute credit to the team and to our partners like DWL that we were able to deliver those and deliver them well for our members over the course of that time. So I think that the big thing for us really that helped to do that was that strong team and that partnership working that could enable us to cope with massive amounts of change all at once, and to share in the pain, the tears and the frustrations, of course, that come about when you've got a lot of change going on at once, but then to share too in the joy and in the achievement of delivering and seeing members really pleased with the way that things have changed and developed, and the way that they're now able to do things that they really just couldn't do a couple of years ago digitally with us, but also to continue. And I think that another important lesson for us has been to make sure people are continuing to be heard as well, and that they know that they're saying things to us, we're then doing something about it, and we're able to move on our understanding and our thinking with them, and we're able to deliver the things that they say that they want. That's a really powerful partnership across the whole organization, which I think is another big part of being a mutual. It's a big part of being an organization that is set up to serve people, is making sure that we can work with them in that true partnership, and that they can see it happening as well, so they know the benefits of being with a mutual. But as well as a mutual, we think we are now a fintech. We're an organisation that was very traditional, and with all those legacy systems in place and legacy processes, even more than systems, we were relatively manual and very antique in some ways in our processes. We spent very little on IT in the past. We got what we paid for, which was also very little. But we've really changed that approach now. We are much more primarily a fintech, and our whole ecosystem approach and strategic ambition in terms of connecting and expanding and doing more is built around the digital future, with an area that stretches from Gloucestershire right down to Dorset and services to provide across the whole of that area. It's really all about trying to find new ways to do the things that people want and need. So, for example, as I said at the start, many of our members are less confident financially, and they really value somebody talking to them and explaining things to them. Now, of course, with an area the size it is, it's very hard with relatively limited resources to have a person in every place. So the thing that we need to look at then is, okay, that's not possible, but people want that face-to-face connection. How do we build that? Can we build it through video chat? Can we embed that video chat within the rest of our ecosystem so that whilst we're chatting to somebody, we can be looking at their account and we can be helping them to do something online for themselves because we can screen share and see what they're doing? It's a different way of thinking, I think, and a different way of doing, but the purpose remains constant, and the organizational model and the way that we are set up as a mutual remains constant too. And it's really just about finding new ways to implement the things that members want in a way that works for them wherever they are across our area and however they want to interact with us. So we're kind of continuing to move on. We're continuing to iterate the platform and to grow. I think we've built an agile culture to an extent, and that continues to be work in progress in getting everybody comfortable in that way of working. We're really growing our money at work proposition, which is around financial well-being in the workplace, because that's something that's been even more important through COVID and through helping people to access well-being services in that way. And we're really on the cusp of agreeing with some further external investment as well, where we're now looking to grow by 10 times in the next 10 years, in particular in the loan book. So moving from an organisation that's currently just approaching £15 million in assets up to one that's going to be pushing 100 million over the course of the next 10 years. And the new investment will give us the tools and the fuel up front to enable us to do that growth, which is fantastically exciting. Do come and join us. We're a membership organisation that's open to members from right across the region. If you live or work in our area, then we'd love to welcome you. At some point in the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to have a retail offer in terms of investment into the core capital of the credit union. We've got an investor lined up who will shortly be committing to 1.5 million, and we'll then have a match for part of that with a retail offer for a further million as well. So obviously there'll be lots of big announcements about that when the time comes, but really do come and join us, and we'd love to talk to more and more folks who are interested in tech, as well as interested in what we do as a credit union and the difference that we make for people. That feels like a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I hope that's been interesting to everybody, and you've enjoyed hearing about our journey and our story. Do please fire any questions at Nathan whilst I take a drink.
Thanks, James. I'll let you take a drink, and we'll see if any questions come in from anyone out there. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask of myself or James around the work we've done, or anything in terms of building strong partnerships? Whilst that's coming in, I'll ask a question because it's going to be really interesting. So you're saying about video. I think it's a really interesting one at the moment where a lot of organizations in that service space haven't necessarily transcended the video element yet. When we're in a sort of B2B place, we're spending a lot of time on on video chat. And obviously this project, we said, Carl, we didn't see each other. We still haven't actually met face to face since pre-pandemic, but we spent a lot of time constantly on video conversations. And I just kind of, how are you finding that shift in terms of consumer demand for sort of video chat and getting the team to be thinking about video conversation? Because that's a really different way of working. Even when one is perhaps face to face in a branch, it's really different to then suddenly do that on a screen. And is that receptive? And have you tried anything with members yet?
So at the moment it's in concept. So we haven't yet built a prototype to go out and trial with members. And there are a couple of different tools that we're looking quite closely at that can help us to enable the tech on that. Obviously, with anything that we do, security is really important. So we need to know that whatever we bring in has to fit within our overall security approach and framework, and that it itself is going to be as secure as it possibly can be as we look to provide that service. So that's a big part of the criteria for whichever tool we go with. In terms of the receptiveness, it'll be interesting. So we've discussed it as a team already, and I think there is a bit of nervousness about being there in front of somebody, particularly for those who have not worked in one of our branches for quite some time, or who maybe have always been in our contact team rather than our branch team. One of the things that we're going to do to help to get over some of that is really to start to move people around a bit more, so that those who are less familiar with interacting face to face with members go and get that opportunity to work in the branch to really develop that side of things. And I think that will help the transition to face to face. Now, I think the other thing that really helps now is that we have all been using Teams. We use Teams a lot internally. We use Teams, Zoom, and any other system of choice when we're talking to people externally as well. So that across the whole team, there is more familiarity with the fact that we use a computer to talk to people, and I think that's going to be common across almost every industry that you could care to look at. Maybe some of the real face-to-face personal service type industries, that's less so. You can't get a haircut via video yet, nor can you go out and eat a meal by video either. So there are some things that have to be face to face, but for most organizations, I think over the past 18 months, many people will have got a lot more familiar with and accustomed to using video as a means of communication. So I think it'll be a much easier adoption than it would have been a couple of years ago, but it will be work, I'm sure, to do.
And I was reflecting as you were talking through the elements you just presented on, and kind of thinking around sort of the partnership and sort of what would have I done differently if kind of from what we know now. And I think the one bit that jumps for me is as we stepped into that sort of shock moment of the seismic change that happened with the pandemic, is really just actually sort of stepping back and realizing the size of that change. It feels weird to say now, it wasn't very clear at that point how big of a transformation that impact was having on the way that we were needing to be able to work, but also that kind of volume of change that was then needing to happen in the background in order to adapt to the change that was coming, as well as we were trying to really shoehorn in this project now to make sure that we could deliver faster in order to try and get it there, because it was needing to have that impact. So I think just probably just actually that point of just when you're in that mix of change and something that big comes in, that it's not clear that it's that big, but actually that step back and just saying, okay, how do we do this? Which in the traditional sense, if there had been such an impacting element, we would have grabbed everyone, got into a room and thrashed it out. And there's that aspect of kind of actually suddenly you're in this digital space and you don't necessarily see all of those things happening, because all you get is one little window into someone's life through a video screen. So that was my biggest. I don't know if you have a view on any of that, as it was the pandemic was quite a surprise. We went through pretty much 2 lockdowns during the delivery.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the fact that on the 15th of March or the 10th of March 2020, what was then Bristol Credit Union was very manual, very paper based. Everybody had to come into the branch at some point or other in their onboarding journey, and to have switched that by a month later to being almost entirely remote, by grabbing tactical tools here and there and getting a quick digital signing solution and start an online ID&V as a more systematic thing. It was a massive change, not just in terms of the way that we did things, but also in the culture and the feeling around the team, who were very used to doing things in a particular way and had been used to doing things in that way for quite a long time. So to have made that shift in such a short space of time, I think that probably helped in that underestimation of just what a shift it had been, because it was almost, particularly I guess for us then, delivering the bigger project, or probably what wasn't really a bigger project but felt like it at the time, we had something else to focus on, whereas actually we'd already just delivered a massive amount of change into the team. So I think if you look back at just how much we did in the last 18 months to 24 months with what was a really small team, it's pretty incredible. We actually are all still standing at the end of it in many ways. If you had your time again, then trying to find a way to embed a bit of the early change a bit longer before introducing another round would have been ideal, in one way. In another way, it would have meant that we were later in delivering the comprehensive digital solution that we've now got in place. And of course, that would have had an impact on members as well. And because we are such a member-focused organisation, I think that's probably where really we were putting our effort and our attention, was in getting the right solution for them in place as quickly as we could do. It's a tricky one, and there's always a balance between making sure that the team are as comfortable as they can be and moving on at a pace which is reasonable, with also then delivering the outcomes for members that we all want. And of course, the last year was just completely thrown in terms of trying to balance those two things by COVID. There's no question about that, I don't think.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the story and for talking about the work that we've been doing with Western Credit Union. I think it's amazing kind of where you're heading, and obviously our partnership with you continues, but I think you're set now on that journey, and I think that realization of being a fintech is so true, and I think that ambition is huge, and I love the connections and the conversations around the ecosystem that's now there, and kind of how you're looking to explore expanding that locally within Bristol as well as regionally across the areas that you operate in. I think it's fun times to come, and I look forward to the announcements of the retail offer in the coming weeks and months. And just to end, really just say to everyone out there, if you wish to join, I do highly recommend joining Western Credit Union, becoming part of the future of responsible finance. I think it's brilliant. So thank you, James, and thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you everyone for coming along.